Now we're going to go to this member specific segment. Paul, tell us.
Ben, yeah,
Ben, wait,
go.
wait. Which one's
Robin's
which
time
one's
to shine.
which one's Batman? I can't remember. Paul,
Batman.
talk to me, Paul. Talk to
Hey,
me.
everyone. So, I think in a lot of game groups, when at least this is what I was thinking about, when we play a new game, one of the factors of which we decide whether the game is good or not is whether it's balanced. And at least in our game group, we use that word a lot. And I thought, me as the game breaker, I'm a person who will tend to try to find the imbalance in things. But I started thinking about how I don't know if we have a real precise definition of what balance means and its implications to board gaming. So I thought it might be a good discussion.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, how would you define balance? Tom, Ben, do you guys have your definitions?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, listen, balance means a lot of things, right? But
Yep.
let's start off with the most basic thing. The most basic principle of balance that's the most important in a board game is that when I sit down to the board game with a bunch of other players, that we all have at the beginning of the game the same relative chance of winning or doing well in that game as anybody else, and that the game itself isn't going to put its finger on the scales in favor of one person versus another person until our decisions start to make that happen.
So if I were to expand that a little bit, 2 people or 3 people, 10 people of different skills, would that be balanced?
Yeah, because it's not the because
not
the
function
game
of
is
the game.
not the game is not making a choice in that matter.
So in a way, the way I saw it is if people of equal skill were sitting together playing a game, at the beginning of the game, before decisions are made, there is no preference of who's going to win.
Correct.
Right? So something like that.
Correct.
The difficulty about that is at least for me, is that that's a metric that's nearly impossible to hit.
Yep.
For example, chess. Is chess balanced?
Well, no. White in professional chess, the person playing black in a tournament is at the higher levels is trying to get the draw. The white person is trying to get the win, because there is and by the way, the first consideration for balance in most games is there a first player advantage? That's one of the very first things.
And it's almost like take Go, for example. Go, theoretically white gets to choose the game that's going to play, and black has to the first player chooses the game, and the black has to adjust. And there's almost, it can be imperceivably balanced or advantaged like first player. Generally, first players tend to have advantage. So I kind of feel like the answer is there's not the actual mathematical situation, but kind of the range of which the players are willing to tolerate of balance. They're within a certain amount, there is this fog of winning, and if I'm sitting at playing this player or this character, I'm within the fog of winning and losing, and if everyone is within that fog, then the game is balanced enough. Does that kind of make sense? Am I phrasing it right?
Yeah, I think, I agree that a game is quote unquote balanced. It feels balanced if we all sit down and we all technically have an equal shot at it, which, by the way, I think is very funny because we live in a society that is fundamentally imbalanced. And as board gamers, we strive so much for balance when we have such an imbalanced society, and there are people who do not get to have that, there are some people who do have first player advantage in society, and not to get all political here, but I think it's a really interesting juxtaposition of the world we live in versus the world where we try to really enforce in board games. And I almost wish that if people applied this passion for balance in their board games to their neighbors, that might be really good for us. But that aside, though, I agree. You do want to have a feeling of like that we all have an equal shot at this thing. But I also think that balance can also be something that we strive for along the way in a board game. And what I mean by that is, so I just played Anno 1800 last night again, and I think we played for like 4 hours. It's super fun. We had a great time and everything, and it's a long game. But there are these like things where you have to like draw cards, and you don't have any control over it. You don't get to do like draw 3 and return 1 or something like that. Like you just draw cards, and it's either going to be good for you or bad for you, and that's that. And it felt a little like unpleasant, right? Because it felt like I had come down all this path, and you know, when we're in the late game, when we feel like we should have really the most control over our fate, and you're just like, and you're just like, oh, I just wasted a really important action to get something that has nothing for me. That
you're getting slapped around
like
by output
moment.
randomness, right?
Yeah.
But I guess my question for you is like, you know, we play a lot of games like, say, Gaia Project. You know, Gaia Project has a whole bunch of asymmetrical powers, right?
Yeah.
And they are not, like, percentage-wise, like you can look on the websites, like, you know, some races win more often than others.
Sure.
Is that balanced?
Well, there are definitely, so there are things that make balance harder in games, and there are things that make balance easier in games. Certainly, asymmetry of any kind, whether it's asymmetrical powers or whether it's asymmetrical board position, advantages, disadvantages, all that sort of stuff. Friedrich, you know, we talked about Maria. Maria is a very imbalanced game. Friedrich is even more imbalanced, and that's why I love it even more. You know, it's a hard thing to balance a game properly when you have asymmetry. Sure. That said, what Gaia Project does, which is interesting, is one of the things that makes balance easier is balancing specific mechanisms. So the last player to go in the first round gets the first choice of races, gets the first choice of which of these things. So in theory, the person going last who has a distinct disadvantage, not a huge disadvantage, but not nothing in terms of that first player advantage, is counterbalancing that by being able to pick a race that has a higher winning percentage. So,
here's the thing, Tom. Like, you know, like this is already taken into account. Like, you know, that balancing mechanism you're talking about is already taken into account when you see that some races like win like 60%, X% of the time. I don't actually know what the percentages are. So, like, yes, there is a mechanism to try to make sure that imbalance isn't even more so. But, like, what the data already says that, like, even during these games that, like, all these mechanisms are, you know, that counter mechanisms is put in, some races win stronger than others.
Yes, but realize that in Gaia Project in particular, there is one set of races that are particularly successful and one set of races that are particularly unsuccessful, and virtually all of the others are well within the realm of what we would consider to be balanced, right? Plus or minus 5%, so on and so forth.
Absolutely, and so the real crux of this discussion is, why do we strive for balance?
Why do we strive for balance?
Oh, well,
exactly.
I think so. I was just thinking about that right now. And I think that like one of the reasons why is that we like to feel like we got a fair shot. We like to feel like we didn't just waste our time on a futile exercise, right? But I also think that a lot of it has to do with the expectations a game might set up for you. Because if you have a game that's like wildly imbalanced, or you have something like Maria that's basically like, Maria's gonna have a hard time. Good luck. Here you go. Like the fun is like, how do I deal with this? Like I've been given like I've got an uphill battle, and how am I going to deal with that? And there are some games that are purposely super imbalanced for that, and that can be really fun. But you know that going in, right? You know that you expect it. I think it's some games where you feel like you're supposed to have a fair shot, and then you realize that you never had a fair shot all along, and then you're like, well, why did I just play this? What's the point of playing this again if I know that, like, if I don't have this, there's no point in even going on for a few more hours? So I think that's why most people aspire for balance in games.
Well, why do we want balance in games is the same reason as why is the starting line of the 50-yard dash a straight line? Right? That's it. Why would you want to run a race? Why would you want any competition to be imbalanced?
And so, like, my response to that, and the answer is that I have is an example in our game. We stack our Avalon deck so that the bad guys win more often. And the reason why we do that is because we have found that creates the best experience for us. In my worldview, at least, like, balance actually is there because for two reasons. One is to do your 50-yard dash analogy, because some games are a race. Not all games, but some games are a race, and you want that fairness in that race. And, like, the other point is, like, balance will oftentimes give a game longevity. But, like, there are many games, and in fact, I would say most of the games that, if you really think about it, what you want to play for is the funness of it, the experience of it. And that, I don't know if it requires balance. It will require it for, like, for longevity. For example, if Brick and Mortar were to cease being new, we play it 10 more times, 15 more times, and we know all the buildings that come out. My appreciation for it may diminish because now there's no discovery of, like, what these buildings can do and interact. Like, we for all of it have stopped playing Glory to Rome. Like, I haven't played it in like 2 years, and it's on everyone's deck. I see it on Matt's shelf. I see it on your shelf. We never play it again.
It's not. Yeah, but I don't know if that's because of that. To me, I don't think we play Glory to Rome because a 1-hour game is an oddity, right? It's not short enough to be a short filler, and it's not long enough to be a full game.
But we used to play it very often as a closing game. Like, we used to we play our Euro, and at the end it's 11 o'clock, and we go Glory to Rome, and we used to do that. But, like, I'm just saying this is my view on balance. Where
but now Ben is in our group, and we never get done at 11 because you're sitting there thinking about the thing to do, and before you know it, it's like
Ben's the worst. Like, we should flush.
Yeah.
But like, go on, Ben.
No. I what I was going to talk about had nothing to do with Glory to Rome, and I realized I was just going to, like, hijack, and you hadn't finished what you were about to say, so I was just going to stop.
But ultimately, like, I feel like, like, when I was playing Game of Thrones LCG, what I found is that there would be better factions than other factions, and, like, and probably by design. And so at one point, the Targaryens would be the strongest faction, and then people still played other factions because they, for all of it, like the challenge of fighting a stronger opponent. And soon there'd be, like, new cards, and then that balance would change and whatever. But, like, I don't know if the LCG would have been any better if every single pack made it so all the factions were balanced.
But they try to balance it.
No, I don't think they do. I think I think not in per pack. I think, like, over the aggregate of over, like, like 5, 6, 7 packs, like, maybe it'll cycle through, and now we have like, a balanced factioning. But, like, at any given time, like, you're gonna, at least the way I saw it, you're gonna find that there were dominant packs and dominant decks because the cards were not inherently balanced for everyone.
I have a hard time believing that was their intention. What I believe is that they put out a deck thinking that, okay, this is good and really interesting, but it's basically balanced, and then through play, people found out, oh, it's not really that balanced, and so then they issue another set. But their goal each time, especially in a CCG, which is right? Which is people have competitions for this for these sorts of things, right? I don't buy that they
Well,
didn't
like,
think that they were doing something balanced.
Well, like to me, like real quick, I love like the reason why you do it is so people keep on buying packs. I mean, like like that's the reason why you like here's the target, here's the Tyrell deck. This Tyrell deck is going to make Tyrell so much better now. I'm just saying from my experience, that's what happened. So I can't speak to what their design and marketing and strategic plan was. I can only say that there was never a time where all 8 factions were balanced as far as decks achieved. In fact, what you'd get would be pieces of cards. Like here's a card that would work great if there was another card, and that other card wouldn't appear for like 2 more decks or something.
Yeah, but in CCGs, you have an infinite number of monkeys on an infinite number of typewriters. They're going to find combinations that are better. No matter how well you try and balance things, they're going to find this is better than that, right?
Maybe, but Targaryens throughout the whole reign of it tend to be pretty strong. Lannister tended to be pretty strong. None of it wasn't. You would think that it would be balanced. The actual experience I had was no, there are better houses than others, and the difference was the people who would the only reason why another house would be a big house would be because they were better players, given equal players. Being put in different, but who would know the most about this? Trey has been in. And maybe he could write something or comment on this.
So I haven't played I haven't played the collectible card games at all, so I can't speak to that. I feel like my emotions on balance are sort of hypocritical, right? Because on the one hand, about 5 minutes ago, I kind of complained about how it was really annoying to turn over some cards late in the game and be like, oh, okay, well, when Elder turned over that card, he got something really amazing. And then when I turned over a card, I got crap, and that felt unfair. And, you don't want to have moments when you're playing a game. Ultimately, you just don't want to have things where you say, this is unfair. And so I get that. I've played games where I've felt that way, and I try not to let it dominate me. But I've definitely been well, this faction's hard. This feels unfair, And I always try to be optimistic. Whatever, I can make it work. I have faith that it was play tested. That there's a strategy behind this. It's just a harder strategy, but I can figure it out because I can do this. Whatever. So I get that. At the same time, there's part of me that also feels like people overly obsess about balance in games, and they don't enjoy that journey along the way. Sometimes people spend so much time discussing if something is balanced, often after just one gameplay. I have one friend who when a game is over, he'll be like, that was really good, but I'm not sure it's balanced. I'm like, you played it just once,
Ben, I'm sitting right here.
He's not in our group. But sometimes people sometimes just listen, this game has such extraordinary and fun decisions. Enjoy that part, and don't worry about was this designed? Was this balanced? Is this the path to victory that's balanced and fair? Just dive into it, And I do feel like I'm being patronizing. I'm really not trying to be, but that's what I aspire to be, Because there are some games where I'm this was such a fun game, and someone spent the entire time, rather than just playing the game, they spent that entire time fixating on whether it's balanced or not. Sure. And I feel like that's almost like a disservice to themselves.
And our group we probably have a slightly early trigger on that. We probably think we know the balance of a game before we're sure about it. I think that we can jump the gun. I think we also, though, have some of our favorite games. Shipyard is one of my favorite games, and it is a very unplayed game because it didn't sell well, and it didn't sell well because early in the day people said that there is an imbalance in the final scoring cards, which there is slightly, but you can correct that, and the game is worth it. The game is really amazing. I think that game players have a right to expect that the designers of the game have designed it and play tested it enough, and this is a real problem. Have play tested it enough to expect a general level of balance, which means that they're
for sure.
Listen, you're never going to until you release it. You're never going to have enough play testers in comparison to the number of people that play a widely released game within the first month. They're going to discover things that you didn't know, no matter what. But what is unforgivable is when things that are found a minute after the game is released, right? The Fantasy Flight I've had problems with for a long, long time back in the old days. They would release these huge, big games that they clearly did not playtest well. I will not play Twilight Imperium because of Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition and how myopic the design was, and things that should have been seen in the first playtest were ignored or not discovered. And a lot of times that could be designers, that could be production pressures. We have to get it out in this quarter and we have to release it. There's a lot of reasons that this can happen. It can be a designer saying, no, that's actually fine, and they don't listen to their playtesters. Sometimes that can happen. Sometimes it just doesn't get playtested enough. The original edition of Game of Thrones, the board game, had a situation in which Greyjoy could make a move in the opening round and kill Lannister. Literally destroy, literally end the game with a single move. And you only have 3 or 4 pieces at the beginning of the game. How do you not see that? How do you not realize that this is something that can happen? That's for sure frustrating. That speaks to a lack of playtesting. Now, Now, when you get into asymmetrical powers, that's going to be a balance challenge, right? When you get to start player advantages and how have you mitigated that, that's a balance challenge. Endgame scoring cards, traditionally very, very hard to balance properly. Because until a whole bunch of people play the game, you don't realize which ones can be wailed on much more than other ones. And then combinatorial elements, which we have in the game we just reviewed today, where if I have the artist studio and I have the consignment shop, that could be an absolute killer combination. How do I know with all of these different buildings that there aren't tons of these combinations that when they come out, they remove what should be a terse and balanced game and make it a slaughter, right? And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that.
Right. Now, I will say one thing that's also interesting to consider is what metric we use to determine balance. And I think that most people, the metric they use is the final score. And a lot of times that's pretty accurate. But there are times when a game can be very balanced and it's not reflected in the final score. And I think that sometimes people will dismiss a game because of that. Because it's always fun, right? We always love it when a game ends and we're all like 2 pieces of, apart from each other. You're like, sure. Oh my God, this is crazy. It's so balanced, because it's almost like like the Granha, that happens all the time, where it's like we want all these different paths, but somehow we want to play 3 points away from each other. Like, that's really, really, really fun. That's like a cool thing to happen. But there are other games where I think you could even make an argument, Food Chain Magnate famously has a lot of detractors because someone could end up with $55,000 and someone else has 5. But you could sometimes when you actually look at the steps that led to those scores, it's like the game was very close, and at a certain point, a dam broke and someone just had a few 2 rounds of exponential. But it still means the game was very balanced, even though the final score looked very wild. And sometimes I do think people go a little too crazy about final scores as a judgment on a game's balance. And if you look at sometimes you just can say, hey, if I had just done this one thing and you had done this one thing, just swap 2 different things, it would have been reversed. And I think, to me, that's a very balanced game.
Yeah, I think there are definitely plenty of games where the scores are close, but hey, that faction seems to win every close game, right?
Well, yeah. Well, let me ask you this, and we can close with this because we're already going a little over again.
As we knew.
We knew. So is it that balance is basically starting and everyone has an equal opportunity to win, or is balance, starting and everyone having the opportunity to have fun? Because,
Wow. Paul.
mind blower. Because like in the end, most people when they complain about balance, they're talking about a lack of agency. Like at this point, the game is now on rails, and I'm just doing stuff to so that Tom, who picked the dominant strategy, dominant person, like he's just going to win now, and we're just waiting for the hour and a half to pass so he can win. But but I find that when I'm playing a asymmetric game or something where everyone is doing something and there is this, even if it's an illusion of agency, like the actual reality of whether they can win or not is a little irrelevant. I'm posing this. I'm not even suggesting that this is a fact. I'm just saying, like,
I mean, you're blowing my mind. This is such a cool perspective on it. And I think that when you talk about games being on rails, like, I think people don't like that. Obviously, I don't think anyone really likes it when the game is on rails. There are some games out there that are just say, I'll be as balanced as you want me to. Like, it's up to you to make that balance. And like, don't blame me if it doesn't come out balanced, because it's your job. If someone's going down this path and they always go down this path every single time, it's up to you to stop them and do something about it. Because I as the game, I'm just giving you the pieces. I'm giving you a rule set, and it's up to you.
Maria would be that way, right?
What'd you say?
Maria would be that way, right? Like Maria, like you have here is a situation where Austria is definitely at a disadvantage. They have to fight two fronts, and everyone else kind of is in a better position. And
we found that with the cost as well.
Yeah. Yep. Right. Exactly.
And like, some people will blame the board game for that. Because the thing is, if people don't pick up on that, or if people don't do that, then they're like, well, this game is all like, this is ridiculous. Like, I barely had a shot and Paul ran away with it. And the game's like, don't look to me for balance. That's up to you as players to do it. So there's also that element. Like, how much of the balance do we want from the game, and how much is expected of the players? And is that something that we want to have that responsibility put on us to police each other for the balance?
Yeah, well, as far as, so I named a bunch of things that make balance harder. Here are things that make balance easier. Auctions make balance easier because a percepted imbalance between things can cost more in order for you to get that. Player perception is a balancing mechanism, right? We're playing Dune, and Harkonnen is a very powerful player. The Fremen,
objectively,
yes, and the Fremen are underpowered, right?
Yep.
The player perception balances the game because you are extracting harder bargains from one player than you are from another. You're balancing it. Now, at a certain point, I think what Ben is saying, I think what you're saying is absolutely right. That at a certain point, why do I have to do all the work? Why didn't the game do a better job of balancing? I think that can become valid, but to some degree, player perception is a very good balancing mechanism, and then there are balancing specific mechanisms, like we just mentioned with Gaia Project, where you go first but you choose last, and so on and so forth. There are lots of things like that. For me, I think that for as many different game players as there are as many different definitions of what is fun for them. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think that a balance can be more nuanced than that. However, I think for the vast majority of game players, a perception that the game is stacked against them is going to impact their ability to experience fun within that game. I think there needs to be it may be, if you are more into having fun that is separate from winning or losing or doing well. If that is your definition of fun in a game, then I think that your tolerance for balance, I think a 60-40 game is going to be absolutely fine for you. That I only have a 40% chance of winning, whereas a person that seeking the fun is having hard decisions over and over and over again and choosing them well. I think that person is going to be looking more for a 55-45 split as being fair enough for them, balanced enough for them. So I think that's really a calculation there.
No, it's an interesting thing. I just, I thought of this topic because I feel like it's more nuanced than I generally give it credit for. I think it really, I think Maria had really informed me on this, where I go Austria is a low percentage chance of winning. If three people of equal skill were to play and experience, I think Austria is going to lose.
Strangely enough, I take issue with that. I think that the more equal skill people are, the better chance Austria has, because if they're equal in skill, then the players realize that knocking Russia out means blank wins versus blank wins, right, and so on and so forth. So there's a balance built into it.
Sure, I am not as experienced as you, but at least at this point in my Maria. It seems that way, and it doesn't.
This is metagame, isn't it?
Yeah,
this is metagame for our ongoing game, right? You're just setting it up, right?
For your game and my Nick's, right? But it doesn't make me not want to play Maria. In fact, it makes me want to play Maria more because of the asymmetry, because the lack of balance. Because in the end, when I'm playing Maria, I'm not playing to win necessarily. I want to win, but I'm playing for the experience.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, if I don't know if this is true, maybe I'm a weird duck in this way, but I think if a lot of people think about it, that's what they're really playing games for, not for the win, but the experience that they're getting to get to the win. Like, for example, there's nothing worse for me than to have a blowout, for me to just completely crush everyone, because I'm not interacting, I'm not really playing. It's almost like I say, on rails.
Yeah.
What I really want is
Is that why it never happens?
Say again?
Is that why it never happens? Because you hate it so much?
Zing! You got me, Tom. But anyway, that's just my thought on balance.
And just just to piggyback on that real quickly, I love Forbidden Stars, and I almost every single time I played with the same exact faction. I think I've only played a different faction once. I forget what they're called. They're just like the generic. They're the blue guys.
The Marines.
The Space Marines. Yeah, they're they're generic. Their cards are not very flashy, and I always lose. But every time I play, not only do I always lose, but online people generally agree that they are the hardest faction to play. Although then there's always people say, no, I always win with them, Yep. But it's sort of like they're not flashy. They're a hard faction to play. And yet I keep going back to them because I'm like, every time I play, I get like a little bit better, or I sharpen my strategy. And I'm like, I know someday I'm going to win. And it's like that imbalance excites me to play that faction over, that unflashy, boring faction over and over and over again to make it work.
Plus you're racist against orcs. Let's just be fair.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.